Welcome to Six in the City, the podcast where 620-somethings talk about shit and some of them live in cities.
I'm Jen.
I'm Lexi.
I'm Nancy.
I'm Elena.
I'm Jane.
And I'm Robin.
Hi everyone, welcome back to our episode of Six in the City. Today we're going to be talking about college, things that we wish we had done differently, and things that we thought went well. Today we have a very special guest, Risako, and she'll be doing a little intro.
Thank you, Jane. My name is Risako, and I'm currently visiting Jane in New York City.
Woo! We're in a tiny shoebox of a room, but very quintessential New York.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, today we're joined by, well, we have Risako, obviously, and then we also have Nancy, Lexi, and myself, Jane. So I guess to provide a little bit of context, Risako is an international student. Well, I guess you were an international student from Japan who transferred to our university. And then Nancy, Lex, and I all went to the same school, as everyone probably already knows. So to start, is everyone happy with the choice that they made? Are you glad that you went to school that you went to?
Yeah, for the most part.
Are we talking about your first school or your second school?
Second school.
Second school? Why did you transfer?
There are many reasons. I think the biggest reason was that the location. So my first school, which was a small liberal arts college in the middle of Pennsylvania, it was like in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, being raised in Japan, I was pretty much like culture shocked by how rural the area is. And I felt like even though academic-wise it was a good environment, I felt like I wasn't really getting exposed to American culture, quote unquote. So yeah, that was the biggest reason.
What about you guys? Are you guys happy with the choices that you made, or your choice to go to the school that you did?
Yeah, I think so. I can't really imagine myself anywhere else. I mean, sometimes I wonder like, oh, what would it have been like if I went to a traditional state school, which I would have if I didn't go to the school that we all graduated from. But then I think about how I probably wouldn't vibe well. I do like the urban setting, and I do think that it helped me mature a lot faster than my friends. Like I had to learn how to adult in certain aspects a lot quicker than friends who went to state schools, because you're still in a pretty much, even though, you know, at the school we were at, it was in the city. So we weren't in as much of a bubble compared to state school kids. So I like the opportunities and the area as well. So I can't imagine being anywhere else for sure.
I am really grateful I was rejected from another DC school that I think is not somewhere I personally would have been happy because of its distance from the city. And then, we were able to go to school in a very urban environment. And I think particularly in an urban environment with like a certain aesthetic, like it's not like NYU or like Boston, it's like a very particular vibe. And I think I really thrived in that environment, not necessarily because of the school, but more so because of the city. Like I don't give the school a lot of credit for anything that happened to me. I appreciate my department. I appreciate the friends I made. I appreciate the city I lived in. But the institution was just like a side note on all of that. And the other way I could have gone is I was waitlisted at, I'll just say, the University of Pennsylvania. And I had the option to sit on the wait list and see if I got in. And I chose not to, because I didn't want to be waiting around until July, not knowing where I was going to live. I wanted to be committed and live somewhere. And I'm, again, really grateful because, living in Philadelphia would not have been that much of a change for me. Like it would have been a change to an urban environment, but I would have been 45 minutes to 50 minutes from like where I grew up. A lot of people I went to high school with went to different, like there's multiple universities in Philadelphia and they went to many different schools in Philadelphia. So I would have been near people I went to high school with, all sorts of things like that I think would have changed a lot about my life. Like what sorority would I have been in, or what, friend group would I have made? What major would I have taken? Because the only reason I got that major I got was because of the first class I took. in college. So yeah, I can't imagine it. I would be a different person.
Yeah, no, I agree with Lexi that what I stated before, I do 100% attribute it to the city that we were in and the location, and compared it to the location of the state school I would have been, and not the institution itself. And I have, there's actually quite a good number of people from my high school that are actually now in this local area, but they all moved after college, and they're, trying to navigate. They've asked me so many questions and have reached out to me, but these are all things that I had to learn 6 years ago. And when they tell me, when they ask oh, how long have you been here now? And I say 6 years, and they're like, oh, wow, that's a long time already. And I wouldn't have grown to be the type of person I am now if I didn't. And sometimes my mom even says she's impressed with me with the sense of person that I am now. She was really worried about me going up here by myself, because I literally had no family, no connections, nothing, and 1,000 miles away from home, which is not as far as Risako here, but it was still for her, she's what are you gonna do? How are you gonna develop? I'm pretty slow in some regards, but I think I've grown in terms of that.
Yeah,
Well,
you
what about
absolutely
Jane?
have from the moment that I met you. Just saying.
Oh yeah, and so has Lexi.
Yeah.
I've known in this recording right now, Lexi and I are the ones that have known each other the longest since the beginning of the sixth, literally the beginning.
Well, I knew Jane pretty early too, but you didn't.
Yeah, it's been.
But we've even seen Jane and Risako grow a lot, I think, too, in the shorter
think,
time we've known them.
For sure. What about you, Jane?
I think it's hard to imagine how different it would have been if I didn't go to the school that we did go to. But I don't know if I would do it the exact same if I had the chance to do it over again. I don't know if I would apply to the same schools that I even did senior year, because I only applied to schools on the Northeast, basically East Coast. And I don't know, maybe I would have done some West Coast schools in California or whatever. So I can't confidently say that I wouldn't, or I can't confidently say that I would do the exact same things that I did. At the same time, I can't imagine it being any different. Because I do think the school that we did go to really shaped who I am today. Probably the same thing as the environment, the institution, probably not the school itself. That whole very exciting.
I think, to be fair, I wouldn't say I can't speak for everyone, but the school, the main thing that has going for it is the location.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So, and I think to give some credit to the student organized things, the things students create, the communities students create for themselves is probably the correct way to say it, are really strong in a way that when I've interacted with friends I went to high school with, or when I see people in college now, I find it shocking how little of those student-built communities they actually have. And it always is unfathomable to me when I go on a college campus and they're yeah, we have a Korean cultural organization. They meet once a semester and they don't do that much with each other. And then thinking about organizations at our school, how intense they were and how supportive of communities they were, and how involved or how little involved you could be in student communities. I think there's something really special about that.
I think another take on that, the ones I'm thinking about that we have, at least in our experience, such a strong connection and bond with, are all cultural organizations, and we went to a PWI. And so then I think that you are actively seeking and trying to foster because you are the minority. But I don't know. I think for me, the stereotype that I always thought of for, state colleges is that they also have strong bonds because there's nothing else around them. It's just literally college students, right? Whereas in the DC area, because you're urban, you're more likely to be able to interact with just anyone, literally anyone. So I feel you have to actively seek, because I've also interacted with, fellow students in undergrad who didn't have that bond, who couldn't seek it out. And a lot of people transferred out or just were unhappy and didn't have that bond. So I think it really is dependent on how you make of the situation.
It takes a certain type of person to thrive in that environment. Even though all the students at our university were so different, they had this fundamental passion.
Risako, would you have done anything differently? Would you have gone to a different school if you could do it all over again?
I'm happy with the school that I went and we went to, but I think I would have majored in different things maybe.
What would you have majored in?
Some STEM things. because so this is like international students struggle, but in America, and if you're international student, once you get the degree, you get the work permit. And that's usually good for 1 year for everyone. But if you major in STEM, you get like 2 more years. So in total of 3 years. I think I wanted to do that because that's a big difference.
Well, is it only because you wanted more time to work in the US or because you actually wanted to do stuff?
Both. Because when it comes to finding a company, like as an international student, like it's a huge thing. Like if the company knows that I can only like stay there 1 year, they don't want to hire you. But if we
But
have
I guess
like,
in the function of your job, like would you want to be doing like coding or like whatever other STEM?
I have to figure out during my college, but
Risako, you should just marry one of us and then you can
Talk
just.
to me about it.
Not hard, easy. We have
You
like
guys-
pictures from years in the past. So you can like prove that you like know each other and it's not like a scam.
yeah,
I said no, so she can marry one of you guys.
yeah.
I guess kind of on that note, with like the whole 3-year OPT thing, are you guys happy with what you majored in? That aside, Risako, are you happy with what you majored in?
If I ignore the like OPT related stuff, I'm pretty happy because that was really something that I was interested in, and that's my like real passion, I think. So yeah.
It's psychology, right?
Yeah.
Just to make sure. What about you two? Are you guys happy with what you majored in? Lexi, I know you are.
Well, am I? Because like you make me think about it because it's hard to explain what I do and it's hard to explain how that relates to what I majored in. I dual majored in archaeology and anthropology for our listeners because I was really, really passionate. I came into school thinking I was going to major in history and realized that what I actually liked about high school history class was not history, it was anthropology. So I was taking Anthropology 101 and I was like, this is what I want to do. And the next semester I took Archaeology 101, which is a requirement for anthropology. And I was like, no shit, this is what I want to do. And so I did both, which took a lot of my time. So there's these pros and cons, like is it about like my career, being a productive member of society, or just enjoying myself? And on my other podcast, we interviewed #ad. We interviewed an archaeologist, like a woman who is an archaeologist. She's been in the field for like 40 years, 30 years or something. And she was saying that college isn't about the job you want. It's about like just learning life skills and learning how to be a person. And that kind of reassured me in a lot of my decisions that I made. But, you know, applying for jobs and stuff out of grad school, I was like, if I had a minor in graphic design with my master's degree, I would have been much more sellable for the roles I actually really want. And maybe I wouldn't have to live in Reno, Nevada.
Oh, no, Lexi.
But, you know, when I go to apply to my second job, I don't think it's really going to matter because I'll have 2 years of experience working in digital content, plus a degree in museum studies, plus a degree in archaeology. Like, what natural history museum could say no to that? Like, if I want to leave the art world, you know? How about you, Nancy?
I don't know how to top that. But I am definitely way more humanities, social science focused. My brain grasped it a lot more than any STEM topics, like hard STEM topics. But I know that if I had worked hard and actually like wanted a challenge, I could apply myself. Like I was really interested in chemistry in high school, but I just didn't think that was the life for me. So I really can't fathom not having had majored in psychology. And when I majored in psychology, I knew that I had to have a secondary higher education degree. I knew that a bachelor's in psychology, at least for me, wouldn't get me anywhere. So I was going to do forensic psychology, which is why for up until second semester senior year, I was double majoring in criminal justice, but then had this whole like crisis about my life and like the criminal justice system and systemic racism and all of that, and like was like, what am I going to do with my life? So then I switched and then got my master's, and I think I'm doing well for myself, you know, with psychology. Without going into a PhD, the route that I'm going is one of the routes that you can do in psychology that makes like more money than all the other psychology routes. And even though money isn't all of life, to me, it helps you gain a lot of things in life that, to live comfortably at least. So that for me was also important when I was evaluating. So I'm happy. I might have wanted to maybe like apply myself more, maybe challenge myself by taking like a couple classes. Like maybe it would have been useful to take a couple business classes or something. But yeah, no, I really can't imagine myself majoring in anything else because I'm so humanities focused. Like my brain, that's just all that it can grasp.
Isn't it wild that like you're like 18 to 22 years old and they're like, decide your life forever?
Yeah, but isn't that what countries, like there are countries out there that you literally decide your career
Right, like,
at
you just
18.
med school or like law school. You don't do
Well,
undergrad.
my one friend in Austria, when you're 14, you can either go to like a college prep school if you're going to go to college, but if you're going to go to college, it's like because you want like a PhD, like you're going to be an academic or a researcher or a doctor or a dentist or whatever, or you go into your apprenticeship if you want like a career, like if you want to be an architect, if you want to be a hairdresser, whatever, like if you want a career that's actually like skill based. And I always found that crazy that like at 14 she had to decide that she wanted a certain job. But when you think about it, like it's kind of useful to spend so many years of your life like mastering a craft. Like if you really want to be like a blacksmith, spending from 14 to 18 being an apprentice blacksmith is actually brilliant.
Right. And I'm sure there's probably studies on this, but I really wonder the satisfaction people have in those countries and the jobs that they have compared to the US, because I think the US really prides itself in individualism, freedom of choices, 100%. And really, at least in the circle that I, grew up in, like college is shoved down your throat. It's expected of you. That's how you grow up and able
I
to
had
move
no
up.
choice. Absolutely
Right.
no choice.
Like it's just what's expected, but that's not the only choice. And so then I think that our society is now oversaturated, which is why a bachelor's almost means nothing nowadays, when people could be doing apprenticeships and going into different careers and making more money because they don't have all these student loans that they're taking out.
Yeah, and some people go
don't
to the 4
recognize that.
years, get the bachelor's, and then still need to go get more training to do something else when they could have just started with that training.
Right. Risako, what are the societal expectations and the culture like for work? Like how we talk about like America, it's like the concept of freedom of choice, and theoretically you're able to be whatever you want to be, but in other countries you kind of choose what you want at such a young age and it's expected you stick to that path. Like what is Japan like?
Compared to America, Japan has like less, how do you call this, like professionalism or like
Less?
Yeah, you have to have like certain experience, like skill to enter like certain industry or like have certain role. So for example, when you're like fresh graduate, to get a job, like they don't really look at your like major.
What do they look at?
Like personality. They look
Oh,
at the
really?
potential in you.
Wait, I like that.
You like that? But also like for me, for example, like I study like psychology hard, but like you don't care.
I guess it's like harder to be like, oh, I did this in college and this is what I want to do. So it's hard to like put direction into your career.
Yeah.
But I feel like in terms of getting a job, if they're only looking at like your potential,
Mhm.
I feel like that would open a lot of doors.
Yeah. It's really good in terms of like, I guess, shifting your direction.
Yeah.
Like if you want to challenge something else, it's really good opportunity. I think that's really different from America, because here I feel like if you didn't study like certain things, like it's really hard to get into.
Right. Yeah.
It's even hard to get into grad school, which is so ridiculous to me because you're going to relearn everything anyway. Like, yeah, it might be a bit more challenging if you don't have that foundational knowledge, but like you should be able to go to grad school and just learn whatever you want.
So then are there like, if you go to school in Japan, because theoretically you're saying like some of these jobs, the major doesn't matter, it's just the fact that you went to school.
Yeah.
Are there majors? Like, do they have majors there? Are there quote unquote like easier majors compared to other ones?
I think they're like more difficult majors and like less, challenging majors.
So why would anyone challenge themselves if the job opportunities are Like if you do major A versus major B, but major B is like objectively harder or easier or whatever, like why would you go for the harder option if after you graduate, job prospects or all those, it's equal for everyone.
I feel like those harder majors, they're like more, I guess, like med school.
If you're going to go to med school,
Or
Like specialty.
Yeah. And then
That makes sense because I always saw things like engineering, even here in the States, as like they have a particular set, not necessarily harder, because I hate when we say things are like harder or easier, but they have a particular set of challenges that is unique to their major. That means they can't necessarily like relate the same to the rest of the students on campus because it's such a unique set of skills that they're learning.
Yeah. No, I agree, Lexi, that it's weird to say something's harder or easier because, like I said, I'm more humanities focused, but have a friend that was very STEM focused and took a social science course. And she was like, that's one of the hardest classes for me because I just couldn't grasp the concept as easily as when I took like organic chemistry, for example. So it really is dependent on the person, but I do agree there's a different set of challenges that is more relevant, and it's harder to understand that if you don't have a basis or a foundation to tackle it.
I think I'm very happy with the choices I made in terms of my majors and minor. So I actually, when I went into freshman year, I was in the business school because I was so set on doing marketing or international business. And then that first semester, I like looked at the curriculum for the next 4 years, and I was like, wow, this is so not it. And like after talking to like some mentors that I found like freshman year, I realized like what I wanted out of college was just like a key to like open as many doors as I could. And this one TA that I had was like, do statistics, like it's applicable in any industry, and also like it's like the basis for a lot of like different functional jobs you can have. So I was like, okay, I'll do stats. And then I was like, oh, I guess like computer science goes well with stats. And I thought it was interesting. So I was like, oh, I'll do like a CS minor. And then, yeah, like it definitely kicked my ass. But I think I'm really happy that I switched to stats and CS from international business. I think like in high school, I was definitely like more humanities as well, especially because like my parents were very humanities focused. Like they were not like the Asian parents that were like math and science. So I always thought I was really bad at math. Then I got to college and I was like, oh, math is actually really fun. I like math a lot. And then I realized maybe like humanities are actually my weakness, but I still wanted to like keep up with my French. So I ended up doing a French minor. But I think it was a good balance between like my stats and CS classes with like very humanities, like French language, culture,
Right.
and like studying like French dissertations on like the most random shit. So yeah, I think it was a good balance for me.
I feel like a lot of organizations that are more forward thinking or more progressive are starting to value people who have like mixed skills. And so like being someone who has experience in different areas is super useful.
I have a question. Would you guys have changed where you have lived in college? Like the type of dorms, like
like our housing situation.
I definitely would have gone off campus.
Yeah, I can't believe you lived on campus the whole time. You're crazy.
That's so convenient. The thing is for me is because like since I don't have like family nearby, whenever I was like coming back, it was always like I had to get my shit from storage, and like the whole moving and thing I had to like do it myself. So then like being able to just store things for like from GW's like dorm storage thing, and then just having them deliver that, and the dorms being already furnished and everything was so convenient.
I think I really didn't like living in dorms, but actually I really like living at the house. It was so convenient and like it was so comfortable.
So I enjoyed aspects of every place I lived. So freshman year, I lived in a traditional 2-person dorm, but it didn't have a traditional style bathroom. GW doesn't have the shared bathrooms. It has individual bathrooms with each dorm room. And I had the best roommate in the world. So I enjoyed my 1 year in a dorm. But after that, I was like, hell no, never again. Our school requires you to live on campus for at least 3 of the years. But I knew I hated dorms, and it was conveniently forced upon me to live in our sorority's house. And it was the best and worst year of college because of the living situation. I loved the people I lived with. Shout outs to Nancy. I loved the environment of like being with a bunch of people who you care about and you share a lot with, and like having a house instead of a dorm, having a little kitchen, having a little living room. Like I spent so much time in our living room and our dining room, having a little basement for arts and crafts, the kind of thing you don't get in a normal dorm experience. And it wasn't a traditional sorority house experience either, because a lot of sorority houses are just dorms or dorms with a dining hall in them. I mean, we literally lived in a townhouse of just a few people, and that was really, really cool, and a unique experience to the urban environment we were in. But I knew I needed to get off campus. So I hooked up with my freshman year roommate. That sounds weird. I like reconnected with her, and we filed for an exemption to be able to live off campus. And they only give out so many every year, and we got it. And so for 2 years, we lived in a shithole apartment. And again, would I want to go back and live in that shithole apartment all over again? Hell no. But was it the quintessential like urban college experience to live in a shithole 1 bedroom in a stinky, weird building that has been renovated for like 50 years? Yes. How about
Yeah,
you, Nancy? You lived in the mega dorm.
Yeah, my freshman year, I lived in a 6-person, not the same building that Lexi was in, but
A different style.
Yes. And the building I lived in was the quintessential freshman dorm, notorious on our campus, has a lot of different distasteful nicknames associated with it and STIs and stuff. So it was like the quintessential, but I chose that for a reason, because I was like, well, I'm not going to get the quote unquote traditional college experience from a state school. So might as well, try to aim for this. Also, it was the cheapest to be on campus, like, in our urban environment, it was the cheapest dorm. And then I read, like, I was really doing my research. Like I was on these different forums, I was on Reddit, and everyone was saying how if you live in a 6-person room, even though it may seem like it's a lot, it's actually a lot more space compared to living in a 3 or 4, or even a 2-person room. And I was like, okay. So, because essentially it's almost like 3 connected rooms. So I found my roommate and we signed up, and the other 4 were complete randoms, and it worked out. Like I was really grateful for the roommates that I had. Like it could have been a lot worse, especially with 6 girls all sharing 1 bathroom in this type of like dorm. The only thing was there was like a brick wall, there was no natural lighting. It was very depressing. Like I really don't know how I survived that, because from then on, the next 2 years I lived in our sorority house, and I also loved the environment and everything. But then senior year, when I got the chance to move out of campus in general, I took that opportunity, and I loved the apartment that I was in. But it was definitely a better apartment for post-grad, not currently in undergrad, because in hindsight, looking back, I wish I should have stayed on campus. I think I should have just stayed in our sorority house. I wanted to get away because I was feeling burnt out for living there for 2 years, like being constantly surrounded by, sorority stuff all the time. But in hindsight, I think I should have stayed because I slept over so many times. I also worked. I didn't know at that time, but or I would sleep over. Jane, Robin, and Jen were also living on campus, like the building next door to the house. So I would also ask to sleep over all the time. And then I didn't know when we signed for the apartment, but I got an internship in Maryland, and it would have been better to have commuted from, actually on campus than from, when I lived off campus. I actually lived off campus from Virginia and commuted to DC, which wasn't bad, but it was still, in hindsight, should have stayed on campus.
We'll just wrap up with one more question. If you could time travel, what would you tell your freshman year self? Freshman of college freshman.
Have fun.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Eat healthier. It'll catch up to you.
Consider still major.
I think mine, this is so cliche, but college is really what you make of it. Yeah, I actually also wanted to transfer, but I ended up staying, and I was like, I guess if I'm here to stay, I'm going to try to make the best of it. And the last like 2-3 years of college were actually really good.
We're
Right.
glad you stayed.
Yeah.
I'm glad I stayed too.
I don't know if you guys heard this growing up, like in high school and stuff, but at least for me, I kept hearing how in college you'll make your lifelong friends. And I have friends, like I have a couple of friends from high school who, I consider my lifelong friends as well. But I also have you guys I wouldn't have met. And I really like it. They say it for a reason, because it makes sense. You're likely, probably living far away from home or living away from home at least.
Yeah.
And, you're constantly surrounded by these people. It's like a sleepover. But something that really struck out to me, I always say this, I don't know if I've mentioned the podcast before, but during our freshman inauguration, there was like one of like the, I guess, introduction ceremonies. One of the like, I guess, deans or whatever was saying how, how like in social media and Hollywood and stuff, they'll say like college is like the best 4 years of your life. And they were saying, I don't want it to be the best 4 years of your life, because then what do you have to look forward to? And that's so valid. So they kept saying like, I want it to be, your best 4 years now, but then that's it. Then you'll have the next best 4 years of your life and continue going on. You'll have fun memories to look back to, but it's not the best time of your life. So I always try to remind myself that, like,
well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks for listening. And if you're going to college for whatever reason and you're listening to this, hopefully this helps. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Six in the City. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Six in the City Pod. This episode was edited by Lexi with music brought to you by Gandhir Patama. Thanks for listening.